Evening and welcome to tonight's Bible study. We have worked our way up to Matthew chapter 14, verse 22, and we'll read verse 20 through to 36. And we all know this passage very well, that Jesus walks in water and Peter asked him to come. Can I come out? And Jesus said yes. Uh, The scripture reads, Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountain side by himself to pray. Later that night, later that night he was alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they exclaimed, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, Truly, you are the Son of God. Then they had crossed over. They landed at Gethsemane. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. Um, Putting the story in context, if you remember, John the Baptist was beheaded. John the Baptist is Jesus' cousin. Um, Herod thought that Jesus was John the Baptist reincarnated, and so he was really in fear of his life. His mother, brothers, and sisters came to fetch him. Instead, he withdrew. He wanted to be alone, um, and even though he wanted to be alone, a lot of people came out, and they were in a solitary place. Place where there's not a lot of people. Jesus wanted to be alone, so he withdrew from the city out into the countryside, where there were nothing but little villages and such. We see then he began teaching them, and finally towards evening his disciples asked for him to send them away. Jesus said, no, you feed them, and we see that they fed over 5,000 men plus women and children. So a minimum of 10 plus thousand, probably 15, who knows. But what we see is that Jesus fed all these people, and then he still wanted to be alone, so he dismissed the crowd, and he tells his disciple, get in the boat and cross the lake while I dismiss them, and I will see y'all later. And the scripture said immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side. So I don't know if they were going to take the boat and go across, and Jesus was going to get in another boat and come across, or he was going to walk around the lake. Remember, the lake was, it's a big lake, but as I mentioned last week, like Otter Tail Lake, it's a big lake, but you could technically walk around it. There's a river that brings water in and a river that takes the water out, but you can still walk around to the other side. And that's the same thing with the lake in Galilee. So he told them, get in the boat, go on. He dismissed the people. But rather than going to be with the disciples right away, he, being Jesus, went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. And here we see one of the things that Jesus did quite often was to go off alone and to spend time praying. We see he did it at the beginning of his ministry. where he went off into the wilderness and prayed for 40 days and 40 nights. You see that this is nothing new for Jesus. He would go off and pray alone, spending time praying. And it was later that night that he was all alone. Again, he wanted to be alone. He was, lost his cousin, lost John the Baptist. He wanted to be alone. And so he did spend some time alone. And it says that the boat was already a considerable distance from the land. But they were buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. And you have to remember, they did not have modern technology where you put an engine on it, a boat, and you put it doesn't matter if the wind's blowing against you. For them, they had sails or roars. And if the wind is against you, you can't sail into the wind. You have to tack back and forth to try to get across if you're going to use sailing, or you have to row, and rowing is rough because, again, this wind and the wave is pushing you back. So the disciples aren't making a whole lot of progress, but they're still a distance away. And the scripture said, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them. So he went up, spent the night alone praying, and as dawn was coming, he went to them. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were afraid, and they claim it was a ghost. There's a lot of jokes about this. I've heard one recently where this guy got out of the boat, tried to walk on water, and fell in, and he was complaining because he did it for his birthday. That his father did it, his grandfather did it. How come he could not walk on water on his birthday? And then his grandmother reminded him, remember, your birthday is in June, and your father and grandfather's birthday is in January, and we are in Minnesota. And January around here, and even today, I looked out on the lake, and Rush Lake is still not completely, we have lots of ice on it. It's not open. There's pieces of open water. I wouldn't want to go walking on it. But in January, I could have walked across the lake, no problem. So, but obviously Jesus was not walking across a frozen lake, not in Galilee anyway. He was walking on the water, a miracle. And so the disciples thought it was a ghost. But Jesus immediately told them, take courage, don't be afraid, it is I. And immediately we see that's one of the things that Jesus constantly reminds his disciples. Do not be afraid, I am here with you. It's a thing that we needed to be reminded of every so often, is that we don't need to be afraid if God is with us. No matter what the circumstance, we see the wind, the wave, and everything was against the disciples. They had left that evening, and all night they couldn't make it across the lake. They were a distance away, but probably would have been easier if they had turned around and came back. But once Peter realized that it was Jesus, and they said, don't be afraid, he said, Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water. Peter, being Peter, have what I call foot and mouth disease. He open mouth and insert foot. My wife accused me of that quite often, that I have foot and mouth disease. Reality is a little bit like Peter in some ways. I, open mouth, say things, sometimes not thinking about another person's feelings or emotions, or just say things. Peter, being Peter, Peter say, hey, Lord, if it is you, tell me to come out to you. And Jesus said, come. And we see that Peter then got out of the boat and walked on the water. So Peter was walking on the water. No problem. But the scripture said, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, Lord, help me. See, a lot of people make a lot of things about this, but the reality is, as long as Peter was focused upon doing what God, in the person of Jesus Christ, told him, don't be afraid, you can walk with me, live by faith, he was fine. But the moment he looked from Jesus to other things, be it the wind, the wave, all the other things that were distracting, he starts sinking. He lost his faith and he starts sinking. And then he cries, Lord, help me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him and pointed out the realities. The reason you were able to walk on water was because of faith. And he said, you of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And the reality is, faith and doubt is the flip side of the same coin. With faith, you believe that the impossible is possible. You believe that the unseen is real. Doubt is believing in things that you can't see also. You have doubt that you can do something because, you haven't never tried it, done it. So doubt is believing also. But faith is positive belief. Doubt is negative belief. It's the same thing. Faith and doubt is believing in something that cannot be seen. Doubt is negative. Faith is positive. And so Jesus is saying, you have little faith. Why did you have these doubts? We should have faith that is positive, that God can and will do anything and everything for us, that he loves us, that, as we've learned, with God, all things is possible. One of my favorite verses with Christ, all things is possible. Might be impossible for man, but with God, all things is possible. So we should have more faith, and faith is believing that all things are possible. Doubt is believing that certain things won't work. It says, the scripture goes on and it says, and when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Here the wind has been blowing against them all night. The moment they stepped into the boat, the wind died down. And it said, then those who were in the boat worship him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. I mean, here these are the 12 disciples who became the 11 apostles minus Judas, and they've been traveling around with Jesus all this time. He performed miracle after miracle, and they have faith that he is the Messiah, but they finally realize that, yes, you are indeed the Son of God, because you've performed this miracle of walking on water, the wind dying down. Truly you are the Son of God. And it said, then they crossed over to the land of Gennesaret. And Gennesaret is another name for the Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias, the land across away from where they were. And this is not necessarily a Jewish area, but a non-Jewish area. Again, Jesus wanted to get away. But the scripture says, and when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. So as soon as people hear Jesus want to get away, they didn't let him. People came out of the tongues and stuff and followed him. As he was in a boat traveling, they followed, and he got out and preached to them, healed them, fed the 5,000 plus, sent them away, went across the lake to get away. And as soon as they recognized him, they brought all the people, all their sick to him, and they begged him to let the sick touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. Again, Jesus didn't have to do anything. The reality is, what healed those people was their faith. They believed that Jesus could perform the miracle, and that's the point. If you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't. That's the faith that we need to have. Unfortunately, a lot of us lack faith, and I use the word us because even I at times, I what Peter says, Lord, I believe, help me with my unbelief. Here these people believe that Jesus can heal because they have seen him heal. They've heard the testimony of others that were healed. And so they believe even if they just touch his cloak, they would be healed. Jesus didn't even have to perform the miracle, their faith. And that's the point with both Peter and these people. Faith can perform miracles. And as a church, we can perform miracles if we have faith. If the people unite together and believe they can do certain things, they will. If they don't believe it, doesn't matter, they won't. And here, this miracle, even though Jesus wanted to be alone, he had compassion on the 5,000. He had compassion on these people who are even non-Jews. They believed that by just touching his cloak, they would be healed, and they were healed. We'll pick up there next week and continue studying through the book of Matthew.